to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Kelly Fish, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, the Assistant Head of School, and the current President of the TIAAA. Welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience around the world where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Sure. So I'm originally from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Grew up in Kentucky where basketball means everything to everybody all the time. And that was definitely the case for myself and for my family. My dad was a very successful girls basketball coach at a high school, Central Hardin High School, where I also went. And literally, I was raised in a gym from the time I can remember. We were in the gym. Every event in my life that I have a memory of happened around school and in a gym. Both of my parents were teachers, and my mom actually started coaching cheerleading because we were just there so much. So she figured she might as well. And she doesn't let us forget that in a matter of just 3 seasons, she won a state championship. So
there you go.
Yeah. So it just meant so much to our family to be around school athletics. I actually didn't play for my dad. I stopped playing in 8th grade just because I knew I wanted to be around it and not have that kind of pressure on our relationship, because it was a really good program. But I was recruited to be a manager in college. I was recruited by a few schools, one being the University of Tennessee for the Lady Vols. Went on an official visit there to be manager. And my claim to fame is that I told Pat Summitt no. Some people might think that's a bad choice. Yes. But just...
Well, let me interrupt you. So how did that go, telling someone like Pat Summitt no?
Well, the official visit they took, and they knew all the things to say. They were like, you could be on the floor during a national championship and call your dad and let me try on national championship rings. But ultimately, my choice came down to the fact that had I gone there, you get no breaks off. It was just that level of commitment. And I knew I still wanted to be able to go home for holidays and summer, things like that. So she certainly, I got to tell somebody to tell her, so I didn't have to tell her directly. No.
All right. Well, I'm sorry for interrupting. So continue.
No, you're good. So I ended up going to the University of Louisville to be a manager there. So that was about 45 minutes from my home. Graduated with a degree in communications and political science from U of L. Worked 4 years there as a manager. And really thought I would stay and be a grad assistant there and pursue collegiate coaching or director of ops kind of route or something like that. But as college coaching happens, our coach left my senior year, mid-year. And so kind of what felt like all of my connections that I had made for that time left with him. And kind of didn't have a plan after graduation and ended up just moving to Nashville. And chose Nashville because I knew it was a good sports town. And I had known Tony Cross at Belmont University because he had recruited me to be a manager as well. Okay. And I just showed up on his doorstep and said, hey, I just moved to town. If you need somebody to pass in practice or to do laundry, I'm here. And I don't know anybody. I'm here to help. And literally 3 days later, Coach Cross from Belmont called and asked me to be an assistant women's basketball coach for him. I got called from a school in St. Louis that I had a connection with and asked me to come and be an assistant coach there. And Louisville called me and asked me to come back and be a grad assistant, all on the same day. And I just felt like I had moved to Nashville for some reason and I needed to see that through. So even though the dream at Louisville came to fruition in a different timing than I had, I just felt like I needed to be at Belmont. And so I coached women's basketball there for 3 years. Also got a sport admin master's while I was coaching, and then literally got out of coaching as soon as I finished that degree and had an opportunity to stay at the university, but just traveled less. I was so young at that time that the girls on our team were my age, and I was having a hard time making friends and figuring all of that out. And now my husband proposed to me 2 weeks after I quit college coaching because I think he thought, I'll see you now.
There
I'll
you
get
go.
to know you now. And so I worked in the alumni office for about 5 years and just had the itch to get back in athletics. I had a child and thought I wanted the school schedule. And so that my parents had with summers off. So I started to pursue that and found Curry Ingram and fell in love with it and went through a really strenuous interview process and got a job to be their athletic director, not really even knowing what that meant probably, and also not getting a school schedule at all. I didn't get summers off or, much more time at home, but I got a job in a profession that I loved. And I realized that like, it felt like being at home, being back around school sports, because that's where I came from.
Excellent. Did you have much of an opportunity to play youth sports during your elementary or junior high years?
I did. So I played softball all through 12th grade. In fact, I do everything right-handed, but my dad knew eventually our area would go to fast pitch softball. So every time we picked up a bat when I was little, he moved it to my left side so I'd be able to drag bunt when we finally went to fast pitch. And so when I was in 7th grade, the area went to fast pitch and I was ahead of the game in that I could drag bunt as a lefty. So we were a sports family and I played softball until I graduated, and I played basketball until 8th grade. And like I said, basketball was a huge part of our life, and was always around it.
And I'm assuming from my days of umpiring softball years and years ago, you were fairly fast, because if you get someone that can drag bunt from the left side of the box, it's very tough to throw you out.
It was tough to throw me out, mainly because it was so new. I don't know if it was my speed, but it was so new and people hadn't seen it before. So I won't credit my speed too much, but it certainly worked for a few years before people caught on.
That's excellent. Let's have you talk for a moment with our audience about the mentors in your life, the people that had a big influence on you.
Yeah, I mean, I love this question because, of course, so many people have impacted so many areas of my life. Obviously, from the very beginning, my parents just really showing me by modeling the impact that coaches and individuals can have on student athletes. It was such a part of our family to be invested in my dad's teams. And so that had a huge impact on me. And the team was super successful, but it was always bigger than that. It was always about the relationships you could create and the impact you could have on the lives of students and families. So that's really where it started for me. And then professionally, I had a lot of bosses who gave me opportunities. Coach Cross at Belmont, he had no reason to say yes to the girl at the door asking to come and do laundry and pass in practice, and he did, and he gave me an amazing opportunity. Um, the head of schools that I've had at my current school, Curry Ingram, Kathy Rayburn hired me on a whim, and Paul Winiger and Dr. Jeff Mitchell both just really have given me a ton of opportunities and seen opportunities for me to grow as a leader, and have really pushed me to that, which I don't take for granted. And then finally in NIAAA, I cannot not mention Mike Elson and Holly Farnese. I met with Mike after my first year and just said, tell me what I need to know. And he just told me to show up at NIAAA events and to go to the national conference. And he gave me books, and he just really continued to reach out and mentor me. Was always someone I could call. He was just a few miles down the road from my school. And so I could always call him for advice and help. And then Holly really prodded me to get more involved and to teach nationally. I'm a Holly Farnese fangirl. Still kind of weirds me out sometimes that we're friends because I just really admire her so much, and respect the way that she invested in me and saw something in me, and just continues to invest in that relationship and prod me to be better and do more.
Share with our audience how the job of athletic administration has changed since you first were an AD till now.
Sure.
Or is it the same in a lot of ways?
Yeah, so I was the athletic director at my school for 11 years before transitioning to the assistant head of school for the last 2. And now in my role, I still oversee athletics. So athletics reports to me. So I kind of operate like a district administrator. And so what I see now is really just that the administrative work has increased significantly. So when I started, I felt like it was a lot easier to make it about just the coaches and the kids and pouring into coaches. And now I just feel like you can get really wrapped up in all the vendors and all of the opportunities and all of the paperwork, and it can just really be administrative. I saw that in my last couple of years, and then I see it from our current athletic director now, and really you have to tell yourself to get out of the office, which used to not be the case.
I want you to speak about being a successful woman AD. And the reason I ask that, because I know obviously quite a few women around the United States, and they're all successful. Obviously, I met them through the NIAAA, but it's not a secret that athletic administration is male dominated. And so I want you to speak about your success, and I want you to speak candidly as if there were roadblocks at some time during your life, because men can be out of the Stone Age sometimes when it comes to women in athletics, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I used to get this question when I first started, I would be really offended even by the question, and I hated being called a female AD because I just felt like you don't call men a male AD. Why is
Right.
it why is it even relevant? Why are we bringing it up? Um, I'm an athletic director. Why does it have to be gender specific? But I will say I have come to embrace it more and understand that it is relevant because one, I bring a different skill set and I bring a different lens and perspective than my male counterparts. And two, it is important to be a resource for other female athletic directors, especially those who are new in the field, which is in our state. There are not a ton of us. So it's really important for me to embrace it a little bit more so that I can be a resource to them and they can feel comfortable reaching out, asking about that different perspective. I really believe that if you see it, you can believe that you can be it. And that's important for female student athletes to see as we encourage them to be limitless in their professions. But it was a challenge. And honestly, I think it came less from colleagues and more from um, parents in our community who just weren't used to that, or just the stereotypes from officials or opponents. That's where I felt it more and where I feel like I had to show up differently. So, something simple. I just always made a point to really to dress up for home games. And that wasn't to be like, ooh, look at me or anything like that. It was more of just to show that I took it seriously and was a professional. And I don't think a male counterpart ever really had to consider that. Or, you know, I was always volunteered to take the notes in the meeting or things like that, that just really, it was, you felt fortunate to be asked to be a part of it. But then once you were there, you kind of realized, oh, wait, am I here just to be the secretary? Or am I here because I really earned and belong here? And the perspective I took was just, if I was invited, then it was my job to do the work and prove I belonged. And so I kind of really took that on myself to just always show up and be prepared and be ready to contribute. And I think that that's probably different than most men have to do. I will say, like, things, people ask. At one point in like an interview process, I was asked, so you're a female and you're an athletic director. And then they wanted me to complete that sentence. It was like, yes,
Huh.
they're true, or, an official or an opponent or something who would just say something that probably was not necessarily appropriate. Those things that happen differently for a female athletic director. But I just felt like if I could just show up and show I belonged, then that was good. And now I do feel like I have an obligation to show up and help others.
Part of the reason I asked this, and I would like, well, I'll take you down memory lane. This has got to be 20 years ago. I was still active as an AD in the high school. We hired a female to coach the baseball team. She's currently the head softball coach at Weber State up in Ogden, 40 miles from here.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, I had a female principal and she said, what should we do? And I said, we should hire her. She's good.
Mm.
But I can't tell you the amount of blowback we got from other coaches, even blowback from officials. And of course, I'd like to think we're 20 years later and we're more inclusive, but I guess it's been different for me. I mean, when I started my career back in 79, I coached girls basketball, and no one says a thing about a man coaching young ladies.
For sure.
But if you put a female and have them coach young men, particularly baseball with its 3,000 unwritten rules that you're all supposed to know, that's crazy. So I throw that, give me your take on that.
Yeah, I come from a background similar to yours, and my dad was a girls basketball coach. He had 2 daughters. All we knew were that women could do anything they wanted. I have strong females in my family. So I honestly didn't face it much until after college, even. And that's where I think I just like at first I really did resist it. And then I really started to just embrace, I just have to show up every day and earn it. And hopefully everybody does that, right? Because it makes your
Right.
best performance. So hopefully everybody does that. But for some reason, it did appear different to people because I think that's why I was able to move into various positions. You know, I had a I won't say boss, but like someone who was a superior to me at one point look at me and say, "Are you even competitive?" And I just thought, oh, like who would ask that to him? Would anyone ever look at you and ask that? And I thought, why do I have to defend that for myself? Um, and we're getting better. There is certainly more visibility. I love going to the conferences now, and there are so many more women, and there's more sessions on women. And of course, the global community of women in high school
Right.
sports, that Jim Brooks has done, all of those things help, but we still have a ways to go, right?
Yeah, no question. I can tell you this. The reason you're on the podcast is because you come highly recommended from Holly Farnese, who's a good close friend of mine, and Mike Elson, who's also a good close friend of mine. So thank you again for being on the podcast. I want you to talk
But
about,
see, well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
how important is it then that women have mentors that will help get the door open for them, right? Like that's what I mentioned
absolutely.
Mike and Polly. I probably don't even know all the places they have helped me get in the room on. I'm probably TIAAA president right now because of Mike Elson, because he advocated. He is proud of the fact that I'm the first female to do X, Y, or Z in our state. And so thank goodness for people like that. And I hope that we can all really strive to be people that will open the door for others.
Well, thank you for segueing into my next question, which was take us on the journey how you become an athletic director at your school, and to be president of the state association is impressive. So let's delve into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm at my school is a K to 12 school. It's a local independent school. And so I don't have access to, we're actually not part of our state association, the TSSAA. So I didn't have access to all of the knowledge of the things I needed to do once I became an athletic director. And that's why it really was Mike Elson telling me about the NIAAA and telling me about national conferences to start that kind of seeking a professional development for myself. Obviously, I was seeking it out in that I reached out to him, but I just wasn't aware. And really, even at the time, the TIAAA in our state was not as robust as it is now. We had probably around 100 members. It wasn't all that active. And so the NIAAA was where I was able to get my foot in the door and get really into going to the conferences, taking LT leadership training courses, looking for opportunities to serve and give back. And through that, I landed at the TIAAA and served in a role for membership chair. That was where I joke with Mike because he told me I think 2016 was the conference in Nashville, and he was really busy because he was helping on the host committee. And he said, "Hey, I need you to go to this committee meeting. Just take notes. It's not a big deal." And it was the membership committee meeting, and it was his way of making me the chair of our membership. And so, and thank goodness he did, though, because it's really what helped me get my foot in the door with the TIAAA, start to serve on the board in that way, served in membership for several years. And then the way we do it is our board really seeks out someone to be the president-elect. So I moved into that role. And then the president ahead of me stepped down, so it kind of gave me an opportunity to start a year earlier. And here I am. So I'm currently in my first year of a 2-year term as president of the TIAAA. And again, kind of served 2.5 years because of the timing of our president stepping down.
That's fascinating. It's a small world because I was in that membership meeting in Nashville in 2016. I was probably in the membership meeting in 2022, unless I had a conflict. So that's amazing.
Well, I probably was taking notes
is.
of everything you said because I didn't know what I was sitting in on.
Then let's talk for a minute of your journey with the NIAAA and being involved at that level and being able to be national faculty, etc.
Sure. Like I said, I found the NIAAA first. And so really just started at my first conference in 2012 in San Antonio of taking courses. And those first few, I took 4 every single time I went, which now I can't even imagine. It just feels like that would be overwhelming.
No, I did that once way back in Las Vegas back in 1998 and swore I would never do it again. But I'm thinking that we may have met before I thought we met, because along the line you would have taken 790.
I did.
I would have been there.
I took that in Orlando.
Okay.
The last time I was in Orlando. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I started taking courses and just really got invested in that. And then, of course, started to pursue certification. So that's really the way I came to the NIAAA first and kind of got hooked on just the value of pouring into professional development, networking with people across the country, and just seeing so much further than just the boundaries of your own school. And then state participation came. And through both of those, really combined, had opportunities to serve on host committees. So I was helped with the conference in 2016 that was here in Nashville. And then in 2022, got to serve as the chair of the host committee for that conference in Nashville. And that, for me, was really kind of where my passion for serving within the NIAAA was really blossomed and took a huge leap forward. I had already really enjoyed that I was teaching 701 nationally, just completed my 5th year of doing that, and was trying to find ways to get involved, but just felt like there were some hurdles or some doors that weren't opening for committee membership or things like that. And then through serving on the host committee and chairing that committee last year, it feels like it's when I finally grew deep roots in the NIAAA and started to realize that I was now one of the older ones that knew people and had options to get involved a little bit more. And so this year I've joined membership committee nationally. I'll be on that starting in January, and just continue to find opportunities to be engaged and to encourage others to attend, which is kind of where I am in my career now, is just making sure that others know about it and can come and attend.
Fascinating. So I never put that together until now. Obviously, I've been teaching 790 for 24 years. Mm-hmm. And I always tell the students to come back and say hi. Your impressions of the guy from Utah teaching 790 with, I'm trying to think who the staff was, probably Mel was on there back then. I'd like your impressions of the class, just if you can remember.
Sure. No, I do remember that Orlando conference really stood out to me for a number of reasons. I was encouraged at that conference to really pursue my CMAA, which I had kind of not put on my radar yet. And then took 790 to open the door for teaching for me. And I just remember feeling like I really wondering if I belonged in that room, I think, and thinking, how could I be at a place to teach others? I still have so much to learn myself, and that you all just really empowered and informed in a way that it felt doable. And you gave a good path to, like, start in your state. This is how, this is about you being able to serve in your state and not making it feel like this overwhelming thing of, oh my gosh, I have to be these people I've looked up to for so long. And part of that, maybe that's being female, maybe it was being newer in the profession, but just feeling like I couldn't or shouldn't. And then every time I walk into the room with NIAAA, someone affirms that I can and I should. And you all did that.
Excellent. Well,
So
and
thank
I obviously have known you better now, but in the early years, because obviously we're in that national faculty meeting every year before the conference starts. And speaking of the recent conference and the recent national faculty meeting, I want your impressions of the Orlando conference. And I'm asking this kind of differently. Let me put something else on the question, because I'm not sure how much you were able to enjoy the Nashville conference as the chair of that committee, with the fact that there was hundreds of people at different hotels, and I mean, just being the chair of the host committee by itself. And so now it's a year later. Now you can just teach. You can go see your friends at the conference. Give me the most recent conference, because I can remember actually teaching in Orlando when you were in the class, and you go right down those stairs from the second level to the first, and we were tucked away in that room right there close. Well, now, my goodness, you had to go down a quarter of a mile you couldn't get any farther away to get to
Yes.
the rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. So chairing the host committee was such an honor, but it was so much work. And so I do feel like now, having that perspective, I just have so much respect for what goes into it. So I kept seeing people from Florida being like, "How are you doing? Everything's going great." Just trying to give them encouragement, because it is so fun, and the connections you're able to make through it are really rewarding, but it was exhausting. And so I do feel like I was able to enjoy it kind of from the perspective of knowing the hard work that was going into it and being super grateful and appreciative for all of that work. And also on the flip side of now not being the one having to do all that work. So for me, this conference was really rewarding. I'm just getting more involved in this organization. So I was able to do the state president's breakfast, which was a nice new experience. Now it was my first time to shadow as a committee member. And so that was rewarding and fun, and makes me excited about that 6-year commitment that I'm entering into. Again, teaching nationally now for 5 years, just trying to find ways to get plugged in beyond that. And so I feel like this conference, coming off of one that required so much work into one that just was more about me being present and taking advantage of opportunities, I really enjoyed it. And then I was able to be a recipient of the Bruce D. Whitehead Distinguished Service Award. And
Right.
so that also felt really rewarding. And my family flew down at the end to join us for that. And my state was just so celebratory for me, which was really kind and nice. And I was just humbled and honored to represent Tennessee, and hopefully to make my mentors proud and all of those things. So that was a really sweet way to end this year's conference for me.
Kelly, what's your favorite part of your job?
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed the variety and the ability to impact the experience of educational based athletics for both students and families. I've always enjoyed that part. I really grew to love supporting coaches. That became something in my last few years as athletic director that I just took a strong passion for, was being able to support our coaches so that they could really focus on students. In my current role, I get to support our current athletic director, Reed McFadden, and he was the assistant athletic director the entire time I was the athletic director. So we have a strong working relationship. And so I love that I now get to support other athletic directors, not just him, but in my role as the president of TIAAA, supporting ADs from now around our state and through our organization is just a passion and something I'm enjoying more than I would have expected.
Very good. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one is, I need 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator, and I need Kelly's suggestions, advice to this new AD in order for them to be a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
Sure. I've listened to your podcast, so I know that a lot of people offer a lot of suggestions, and I don't want to duplicate all those, but it's hard not to.
Right.
Uh, so I live kind of by 2 mantras. So I'll go that route. So one of them is, you are not tough alone. I say that to myself. I say that to other athletic directors, to our coaches all the time. You are not tough alone. And what I mean by that is just so important to build a network, to be willing to ask others for help, and then on the flip side, to show gratitude when others do help you. So just knowing that you have a support system, and that whether it's the custodians in your building or mentors from across the country, you are not tough alone. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to walk through something by yourself. Chances are someone else has already walked through it with you, or has already walked through it on their own, or would do with you. So that's the first one. Just remember, you're not tough alone. And then the second one that I kind of hold on to is, I wear it on a little bracelet, even as a reminder here, that just says, show up. So especially early on in my career as an athletic director, I didn't know what to do the majority of the time, it felt like. And you're not always going to know what to do. And new problems are going to come that you haven't navigated before. But just showing up is more than half the battle, is one, when you can show up. And that means showing up with solutions or ideas, showing up ready to work really hard, or willing to do any job, whether you're selling tickets, lining the field, doing concessions, keeping the book or the clock, greeting officials, whatever level of job it is, just show up willing to work hard and do it. And then just being present, and the rest takes care of itself, I feel like. And so showing up also allows you to build relationships. It allows you to learn more skills, to gain perspective. So, sometimes when you don't know what else to do, just show up.
Excellent. We'll finish with this question. Kelly, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Mm. How about, you didn't really ask much about why I got out of being an athletic director as my full-time job, because I did love it so much. So a lot of people want to know why I'm not currently
Well,
doing
then share with our audience.
it. So I love, I even have a hard time using past tense. Loved being an athletic director full time. My son was at my school until 6th grade, and then he changed schools. My school is a kind of a niche school. We serve students with learning differences, and he wasn't necessarily on mission, so he transferred to a local school that was a better fit for him. And I continued to be the athletic director for a full year. And what I realized in that year, and I kind of could just feel myself sitting at his graduation in 5 years and having missed it all, and seeing every other student play sports, and him literally being a couple miles down the road and me missing him playing. And so in that year, I just really wrestled with where I needed to be, and feeling like I was ever in the right place. And thankfully, my head of school, Dr. Jeff Mitchell, had really been pushing me to do a little bit more in leadership in our school. And so that time when he pushed and asked, I think surprising to both of us, I said I was ready, because I just knew what I needed to be as a mom for the next 5 years. So thankfully, he did was very open to making sure that athletics was still a piece of my role, and also ensuring that I can continue the work in the NIAAA and the TIAAA, because that was so important to me. And so I'm so grateful that I got this amazing opportunity within my school to grow as a leader, got to keep the things that I love, and also get to be what I need to be as a mom. So not many people can say that is an opportunity that presents themselves for them. I do get asked a lot if I'll go back, and who knows? I would never thought I would have left it, because I loved it so much. And I do love that I get to stay around it and stay involved. So it is what it is for what I need now.
Well, thank you for sharing that family message, because I think sometimes happened to me when I was younger. I think it happens to a lot of people. You're watching other kids grow up and play, and sometimes that comes at the expense of your family. And I just appreciate the fact that you put that out there, that there's nothing more important than family, because I don't think there is. So thank you for sharing that. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our guest today has been Kelly Fish, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, Head of Schools, and the current president of the Tennessee Interscholastic Athletic Administrator Associations. Thanks so much for being on the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.